Okay guys, this is a tutorial for UV mapping in 3D Studio Max for TES Alliance. As you can already see, I've already started mapping this out. It's pretty gorgeous. Still got a lot of work to do, but I'll show you. We'll go through pretty much every method of mapping there is, because I know it can be slightly overwhelming, especially if you just want to do something simple. There's so many different ways to do it, but that's one of the reasons why Max is so good. Well, let's start simply, which is to say, let's go to one of the problems that you need to be aware of is when you don't want to put every single thing on a UV map, because it'll be ridiculously small. You know, you won't be able to get this kind of level of detail on any of your stuff if there's too many objects on one UV map. And obviously this is broken up in one. This is broken up in another, and on it goes. I think, though, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna have to make a map out of this. Well, we'll go through it right quick. We need to first put a unwrap modifier on there. What I'm using here is active type, because I don't really like to go in and go into this and find the UV unwrap. I mean, you can come in here and hit U and slap on the modifier. I don't necessarily like to do that. I like to make it simple. It's called active type. You just hit a hotkey and this brings up pretty much everything. I mean, you can think of symmetry, sculpt, smooth, skew, all of the modifiers, all of the different things. You can make your own hotkeys for different things that come up, but for right now we're going to just throw this on. Remove the ignore back facing, because that's pretty annoying if you have it on. Well, oh yeah, if you have it on, it's not going to select anything on the back. I don't know why they put that as default, but it's pretty typical to just untick that. And let's go ahead and isolate this. So it's fairly basic, just essentially two boxes. Obviously, I don't know why these haven't been removed. I always want to make sure that we have, you know, the least amount of geometry that we need. I mean, obviously nobody's going to see it on the ground, so that can go. And again, let's just put this modifier on, ignore back facing. So the first thing we'll get into is the projection mapping. This is pretty straightforward. Whenever you select something, this yellow thingamajig is the projection map. So right now, essentially, it's looking up at it, and probably looking down at it too. And this is why, if we go into the UV editor, okay, again, the transform matrices of the following model should be resetted. That just means that, I guess for whatever reason, I grab these, and if you make a box and say you don't want to mess with the spinners, and you just start grabbing it and moving it around, scaling it like that, it'll mess up the X form. So it's looking for a certain size whenever it goes to map it, but when you start doing this outside of the spinners, it doesn't know what to do. So easy fix, reset X form, We'll just throw this modifier on, and we'll just convert to an editable poly. You can convert to editable poly or mesh. So let's go back and do this all over again. So like I was saying, this is your projection map, and what we'll see here, the first thing we need to do is remove that. That is completely unnecessary. So see how everything is flat, because that's how it mapped it. That's not going to work. I mean, this is, first of all, it's not relative at all. So this needs to be fixed. One of the ways we can do this, one of the first ways we can do this, is use a projection map. And for this, essentially it defaults to a planar map, which on anything you can scale it out any way you want. And let's get this back in here. You'll notice that it changes with it on how it maps it out. Same with the cylindrical map, and I believe oops. Yeah, you can move this. Oh, I like that, but I don't need that on there right now. You'll notice that it goes with the flow. You can, of course, move it around however you want it. You can really use this for visualization of what it's supposed to take, what kind of mapping it's supposed to take to accomplish this. I never use it, ever use it. And see, so what it does is it projects onto this on different sides. But I mean, as you can see, we have 3 sides to this box, and that's all we got. I think they're all flattened on top of each other. Yeah, they're all flattened on top of each other. That's not going to help us any. So I just wanted to show you that we can start with this. You can align it to the different vertices, center and fit. This is a reset mapping gizmo. So if it gets too out of hand, you know, you just come back and reset it. So really not something you really need to mess with, in my opinion. So let's just move on. For this bit, it's going to be fairly simple. 3 sides for this. What we want to do is let's just flatten it to get that cylindrical map off. The first real basic method of UV mapping is to flatten everything out. This is extremely simple, but the idea is that it breaks them down into pieces, and let's just go over this again. Flatten mapping, what it's going to do is the face angle threshold will essentially cut everything at a 45-degree angle. So if it's larger than a 45-degree angle, it's going to get broken at a seam, at an edge. So obviously these were not at 90 degrees. They're going to be broken into pieces. You can, if we take this and we put 91 degrees, now you can see that it doesn't break it, but now we have another problem where they're stacked on top of each other. So typically 45 is about the best you can get. Normalized clusters, of course, you take this off, look, it's just going to go nuts. We want it in the UV box. So we always want to have normalized clusters on. Rotate clusters just for it to fit. Fill holes, I'm pretty sure that means in the UV island box. Material IDs, I didn't use them. If you want to get them super close, you can do it like that. So this is really the first method. Well, I'm not sure why it's doing that now. So we break it up, and you have to watch this. Select element by UV toggle. If you have this selected, it will. All of this is broken up, but if there's two together, it'll grab both of them. So we want that off, and we want the edge selection. You'll notice that whenever you select an edge here, there's something blue pops up. That means that it's directly connected to it, so it needs to be stitched. And so that's the idea of using the flatten mapping. Now we're going to stitch it all back together. Seems a little counterintuitive, but that's just that's so we make sure everything is equal. It's flattened to each plane. There's no funny business going on with it. If one side's longer, the other side's shorter. This will literally cut everything at its perfect size. So now the only thing we need to do, I mean, as you can tell, it's perfect. We just need to stitch it back together, and in stitch, we can stitch a target that stretches it out. See, it was at an angle, so now it's kind of off. We don't want that. Stretch to average, it'll stretch it to the middle, or stitch to average, it'll stretch it to the middle. This stitch to source also pretty much is the same thing as the first, so it's just the opposite, really. What we want is stitch custom, and that will just move something else over here. So what we do is, we'll take this and we'll just stitch. It'll pop over from wherever it's at. So there's our first guy, and we will pack together. Oh, I normalized it. Whoops. Pack together right here. I have that on a hotkey, so we can move that out of the way. I can move it back anytime. Now let's move to the next one. Same thing. Let's go over here. It would be stitch custom. I have it all on hotkeys, so you can kind of tell how this is going to go. And now what we do is we essentially just resize it to where we want, to where it'll fit. And since this is, well, I take that back. I've got to be careful because the sides are going to be one type of texture, and the top here is going to be a walkway. So this is going to have, this and this is going to have a completely different texture on it. So let's get back into this, and what I'll do is I'll just break these apart. Wait a minute. Yeah. So we'll break this apart again. So now I have these two guys. Let's make sure they're facing each other. So, see, it's over there. We want this facing forward. Hit A to snap. So now we're rotating. Whoops. 90 degrees. Well, 90 degrees. And so there we go. These are right on each other, and that's how we'll keep them. The rest of this is going to be essentially the side. So yes, now we are going to have to, instead of doing this, we need to we need to essentially break all these off, because even though I showed you that method, it's not going to work for me. This might seem a little ridiculous of what I'm doing, but you'll understand. I don't know why it was So see, we need it all at the top. We need it all facing the right way. Yep, that's facing the right way. It's facing at the top. Well, sometimes it gets ridiculous on me. So now that's also facing up. You can see where it's facing up. That should be the top. So let's hit Z to zoom in. Alright, whoops. And what you can do here is hold shift before you drag it. So you hold down shift, and it'll keep it on the axis. Like it's pretty smart, so it knows. And see, that way, whenever we get in here and line this up exactly how we want it, used to Photoshop zooming. Now we can hold shift and drag it, and it's not going to go up and down on us. Oh, it did because I released shift, but it goes up and down, and that's not going to fit. That's okay. So that's the top. Let's find what the top is here. That's the bottom, so I guess this would probably go the other way. Yep. Well, I typically use Hedis UV layout. It's not very expensive, but it just makes this so much faster. I mean, this is laying out these UVs is just incredibly tedious. So I'll hold shift and I'll just drag it down. There's our first one. And what we'll do, since we have enough room, is we'll scale this up. And I know I just spent a bunch of time getting all that crap lined up. Whoops. Oh, and by the way, whenever you scale, what you want to do is grab everything to scale it, because you want to keep it all uniform. And you want to click down, left click, and then hold down Control. And then that will scale it uniform. Because if you just go in here and grab it, it's going to get all wonky on you. But if you hold down Control and then try to scale it, nothing's going to happen. So, we want to try to sort of eyeball this. And I'm a stickler for making about as much room as possible. Really? That's good. I'm not trying to get it super perfect. We could probably scale it again and snatch a few more tiny centimeters, but you get the point. Now what we want to do is we'll go over the normal mappings in the unfold, but we are going to, I think it's a good practice to select everything. Sometimes you want to select it individually and Shift R, or of course you can come into Tools and hit Relax. Relax by face angles is the only one that you want to use. all of this really doesn't work. I mean, if it works, I don't know the context. And we just want to make sure the amount is up. No stretch, typically. Keep bounding points fixed. We don't need that either. I do use this sometimes, though, if I'm using organic. I'm trying to do something organic. This will make sure it doesn't just sort of spread out too much. And then we just start relax. As you can see, it's starting to move it, but this will keep it. Let me make sure it's not over. This will sort of poof it out to its natural state. Really handy, especially when you're working with more complex models. So let's go ahead and render the UV template. I'm going to go with a 2K map, 2048. Force two-sided, doesn't really matter. Fill. A light gray. I typically do solid. I don't want to show overlapping. Typically I don't, because it makes it a rat's nest. The edge we'll keep it dark black. Visible edges and seam edges green typically, so everything looks good. This is sort of how I like to work. And we will save this as a JPEG. Some people like to use PNG, it doesn't really matter. This is the main back dot JPEG. And I like to, you'll notice that I like to keep the quality pretty low. I mean, this is just you know, I don't want to, I've got tons of these on my hard drive, so it doesn't really matter that much. It's not like I'm using that map, I'm making an entirely different one and just using that as a base. So let's get into some more difficult sort of UV mapping. So I have the create panel and the modify. Here's the create tab and the modify tab, and I have them both on hotkeys because it's whenever you're in this and my hotkey doesn't work to, you know, you can't select anything else unless you get out of it. So we'll go to the create tab and then we'll select this guy. This is fairly more interesting. Of course, we want to make sure we reset the X form just in case it barks at us again. Convert that to editable poly. I've got it on a hotkey. And we will add a UV modifier. Same thing, different. Let's so here, so the plan really is, since we have these 4 exact pillars, we'll be overlapping them. We'll just place one on top of the other, so all of the texture will be the exact same on these. And we might throw in some different variety on the ledges here, so when you walk in, it doesn't look exactly the same all the way around. And since I don't typically do anything with the projection maps, we're going to skip it, remove this annoying thing. And what I typically do is I come in and just flatten the map just to get the parts, just so I can kind of see them. The first thing we want to do is we'll attack this. What's going on here? Oh, I see how to do that. I should have made a mess of that, didn't I? Okay. Mapping. Let's go into normal mapping, and this is very straightforward. seems maybe a little bit daunting, but back and front mapping essentially is the same thing as a planar map, but it just maps the front and back. It's like looking at it from the front and the back, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. See, there's 4 sides to this, but because we did flatten mapping, it only picked up, of course, 2 sides, only the front and the back. And so you'll notice that we come over here, this is how it saw it, because it only saw it from the side view. This is actually really nice when you're doing something that just has a front and a back. And this, of course, applies to left and right and top and bottom. Now, the box no top mapping really just does pretty much exactly what it says. It's made for a box with no top. And we don't have a top, so this works out perfectly. And we'll see that if we relax this, we'll see that we were pretty close. It even caught that bottom. The next is just a standard box mapping. So this is pretty much like exactly like your planar maps, except in my opinion it's way easier to use. All of it's the same as the flatten, the spacing, align by width, rotate clusters, normalize. It's all pretty much the same. This probably worked a little bit better. Yeah. So obviously this is pretty much what we wanted if we were going to use a normal mapping method, which, I mean, essentially, let's be real, it's almost the exact same thing as the flatten. The flatten really is the go-to if you want to go through the tedious task of stitching all these together, and I'm just showing this to you. Now, one of the most useful is going to be the unfold mapping. I mean, this is incredibly useful. Walk to closest face is, I don't think I've ever used walk to farthest face, ever. This is a much more, this is something that you would see, if we had small boxes and stuff, we would see something like this. I mean, this is probably how to map it. Everything is connected. You know, there's no spaces. We don't have to do anything to it. We'll check out the relaxing. Yeah, no relax. So this is pretty much how I like it. It's how I like the boxes to look. But of course, the other way, because it takes up so much room, we are going to do it in an even better way, in my opinion. And this is something that I could do very quickly in Hedis. So and if you notice right here, obviously you can't do that. So oops. Anywhere we want this, and then we'll just hit X, set it to the side, and this will save me a lot of room, and it keeps it nice. And to be honest with you, let's do this. Let me get off. I got a hotkey for this because that's annoying. We're going to break that and set it to the side because this is really all I want. I should have probably deleted these bottom polygons. I don't know what was going on with that. Oh, this thing is on. It'll grab the whole mesh. Doesn't seem to work right in this. So now we have the next one. We are going to do the same thing. Flatten mapping, of course, by 45. we already checked this out, so doesn't all the other boxes from now on don't need to be relaxed. And I've got this stitch, which is of course right here, the custom stitch on a hotkey. And this the pack together I also have on a hotkey. So if you see it moving real quick, that's why. And this is how I pack them on top of each other. So now those two boxes are identical. You can't tell them apart. And so the same texture will go on top of it, and it'll save a lot of room. And so we will move along. No, let me keep that there just because it'll flatten it different. So that is done. Now we can use an unfold mapping for this. Perfect. That's typically not what it's for, but I mean, when something's on the top, the unfold mapping really does a good job of just giving you a really quick, and so you don't have to relax it at all. It's just a really quick way to get a nice size on there. What, really? I don't know. And of course I have the edit UV on a hotkey. So we will unfold this. And let's just actually see what it does and walk to farthest face. It will, I'm sure, totally screw this up. Well, I don't know, I don't trust it. One of the bad reasons for doing it like this is that we are going to have to look at have to look at how this, we're going to have to essentially eyeball this to get it right. And I'll show you what I mean. Like if we come over here, we see this checkerboard pattern. All you want to do is you want to go click on it. Sometimes it doesn't click right. So the first thing that we will notice is these checkered are bigger than this. So what we're going to have to do later, whenever we finish this up, is we are going to have to eyeball it. And like I said, you have left click and then hold control, and then that way it'll uniform. Close. And see, when we hook up our texture to this, we'll be able to give it a little bit of room, and then we can sort of move it around. Where are you at? And this way will help with the seams. So if we come over here, we want to sort of line this up a little bit better, and we can hold shift a little bit and sort of drag. You know, I know there's a way to turn that off. should I be looking for it? Yeah, so I just turned off shade selected faces. That should help me. Oops. Hold down shift. Oh, I was going the wrong. Oh, no kidding. No wonder why nothing was working. I was going the wrong way. And see. A little bit more. A little bit more. That's you. I mean, you get the idea. That's how we'll use this method to fix seams, so it just looks a little bit better. So we'll make it like, let's just say we have this in here. So this is our space. We'll make the texture, say, this big, and that'll give us enough room to sort of move it around a little bit to line it up. And that really helps if you have to have a lot of seams. Sometimes you don't have to. So let's go to this. We will start right here, and I'm going to put back my selected faces, just because I want to show you a little something here. We can actually draw seams from here. So I want a seam, and I know it's kind of hard to see. I'm not sure exactly why it does that. So this is one seam because we want it away from this. This is the loop edge. We can grow and shrink selections, but we want to come down here and convert edge selection to seam. And you'll notice that it turned blue. Now that's a seam. So if we come in here and we go back to our face sub-object, we can manually come in here now. Oops. And attach this thing. Why is it? Oh, I guess something else. The back is still attached to it. Don't know. That's just another way how to do it. So if you have something and you want a very specific seam on there, you can, of course, come in and manually put the seams. I'm trying to think if there's a... Let's go ahead and let me show you... Let me show you pelt mapping. And I don't really have an organic shape on this, but I will show you exactly what this does. This is one of the most useful tools in 3ds Max. You don't really have to do anything. You can just come in here and literally just hit commit. But of course, the settings for the relax tool are there. My settings are already saved, and so it not only will relax it, it will also pelt it. So if you had a really organic model and you wanted to pelt, it would literally just spread this out as even as possible, and then you can relax it, and then of course commit. So not only is it stretched out the best way it can be, flattened and stretched, it's sort of like a really quick method of peeling. Peeling is also used for organic models. You can come in and place pins. Let's just go into... we're not going to be able to see this very well, but you can select the vertices, and then we'll pin them. There it is. Now we'll come in and we will flat mapping. Oh, I'm sorry. Not flat mapping. Quick peel. So what it's going to do is it's going to try to stretch this out as much as it can, but it's like nailing down a tent. If you can see, it's going to try to get the most out of the topology as it can. Of course, I'm not a big fan of that unless you're doing something like a human head or something. Sometimes you have to click it a few times to get this to go. But I mean, for architecture, you're really never going to use that, and it's essentially a waste of time. But to even try to use pelt mapping or whatever. So let me see. We need to get rid of that. I'll just show you how I work. Always try to keep these things out of the way. What we have done. Neglect the top, and I mean, you'll notice whenever I get into Max, I'm almost always going after the unfold mapping. It's just that much simpler, in my opinion, to use. It really does what I want it to do. And this is why it's tedious, and this is why I use headers, because this would probably already be done by now. Another thing is, when you're in this main frame clicking on things, it does not zoom very well at all. I'm not really sure why. I mean, this is pretty much about all there is to it. So now that we have some of this done, I mean, even, you know, stuff like this, very straightforward. Like, we'll take this pyramidal shape, for example. This is a little bit tricky, but I'll show you how I would set it up. We will just go ahead and flatten it. That's how I want the pyramidal shape. because what we're really trying to do essentially is save as much room as possible. I could have left them loose, but then you'd see how much space was in between that, you know, and it's not very nice to try to get into Photoshop and navigate. But let me give you a very simple example of what's going on. We'll take this tiles right here. Let me Control Alt I for image size, and I'll tell you what, Control N, and we'll make this 2048 by 2048, 200. We'll just use this one since it's closer. So we have this, we can say, oh, we want a different color. I like the bluish green. I have a ton of DeviantArt things. Well, let's just say that what we want to do is we want to control click the picture, and that way the blue won't get anywhere else. It'll just come in here. That's a little bit easier to see. And here's the great part of using Photoshop and 3ds Max, because we'll map it. So I'll just hit Control S, and we'll go to test, and we'll just save it as a PSD, and we don't have to merge the layers or anything. And we will just come in here. We don't have to get alternate tab, and we will just drag, well, really if I can do it, and we'll just pop it on here. So if we had like a tile or something, and we wanted to really try to set this up. You can see, well, hey, maybe that doesn't match. We will come in here and move it around. So you get the idea. And the best part about this is that we can come in here and we can look at it, we can render it, see how it looks, and then we can just change something. We go, well, I don't really like the color. It needs to be a little bit darker green. Control S, save it. Takes maybe a few seconds. And there we go. Now let's save this. Exit isolation mode. And let me show you one last thing. No, not symmetry. We are going to deal with things that are round-ish, because this is really one of the most sort of confusing things at first, especially if you're UV mapping, because you get, it's like almost like, well, how do I figure this out? How do I figure this stupid round thing out? Because no matter what you do in any of these mappings, and we'll take it. Well, of course. The only thing you well, that's what I get for being in a hurry. Let's use this guy. We'll bring it in. That does a pretty good job. There's still a whole bunch of stuff underneath it, but ultimately this is what we're going to want. We want it straight, typically, unless you got like an organic type texture and you don't really care. It doesn't matter. They'll show you the two ways that are pretty much the best for doing this. But of course, as you can tell, some of these are really overlapping. You know, there's not really like, you can do it like this and just slap a texture on, but you won't really know what's what. Say you want to put something or another right here, a little a brush, or you know, Celtic artwork or something. You really need to know where this is at, and with that mapping, like I explained earlier, that doesn't really help. Huh? Why is this not working? Well, it's not showing up on my thing. There it is. So we don't want anything that's inside. We want everything that's outside. That was a good guess. So we have all this. Let me show you something very basic right here. I don't know why I spent time doing that, but let's say we have this. We need to break this apart in half. Get rid of our thing. Obviously that doesn't work very well. You'll see where I'm going with this in a second. This is something you'll have to do fairly often. 2012 doesn't have a you cannot select in UV, Unwrap UV, you cannot double click or shift click any of these lines. So yes, you have to individually select them. That's another reason to not use Max, but UV layout. Okay, so we have these selected. We want these straight, just like we had earlier. We'll come up here to Quick Transforms, and we can align horizontal. Obviously that didn't work, but if we hold down the left click on align horizontal, that's what we're looking for. Now we want to do the vertical. If we just click on the vertical, nope, that's not right. We have to hold down left click, and there we go. Now we just need to oh, it's where's it at? Yeah. There we go. That should be fairly lined up. Well, I'm not sure why it did that. Yeah, it's fairly even. There's a way, if I remember, to do it. Oh yeah, what the hell am I doing? I think I have to pin these first. That didn't work at all. I think it might have been yeah, that's what it is. Straighten, selection. And that should bring it back to where it needs to go. You can tell it's still kind of goofed here. Obviously another reason why not to use Max. But you won't, whenever you flatten something like this out, like, let me give you an example. That was a really horrible example that I couldn't really come back from. But something like this, it's already been relaxed, or it's already been mapped. So this shouldn't have any problem at all. There you go. Perfect. Obviously something like this, you'd have to try something else. Let's see what we can do here. Let's go with the diamond mapping. normal mapping. Nope. Unfold mapping. Yeah. Let's break. I'm not sure exactly how well this will work on something so curved. I mean, if it does work, it'll work well. Oh, it's really annoying. Oh, so what's going on here is that these aren't welded. Well selected. And so we're going to be selecting all of these again. Yep. That should be good. And that's how it's done. Now if you put something straight, see, it's going to look straight. The problem... Really? That looks horrible. It must have been way too much of a curve. This one looks nice. And see, this is how you want to get it. Of course, that's not straight. That's the other one. But like, if you wanted something I had on there earlier, which was this map, you'll notice that these, if you just left it like this, you're gonna get curved lines. See, whenever you look at it straight, it's not gonna go around perfectly when you have these lines here. See this one right here? So every single one of them, every single line is going to be on this, and you, to fix the seams, you just of course would have to move them up and down. Like so. Well, I hope you guys got something out of this. And I believe that's it.